Okay, humans, here we go. Okay, moving slow today. Oops, yeah, I really am. Too much exercise. You have to exercise to the point that you reach muscle fatigue. The problem is you got to live in that body after you reach muscle fatigue. It works, you know, I mean, the muscle, you get strength and so on. So anyway, this is OverWoo News. Woomers and news. We've got surprising energies from space coming in. This is foreshadowed, not really foreshadowed, foresayed by an uptick in UVB and UVA relationships in my locale at a particular time that have a particular time ratio from readings taken in the morning and taken later in the morning. And I track it over time. I've got a pretty sophisticated UV meter. And when I see the ratio start to alter, then it's like, okay, we're going to get another burst of this incoming radiation. Whatever it is, I think my conclusion is that it helps drive longer duration or longer window of UVB during the day. It doesn't seem to start that much earlier in the day, but it does seem to go on longer during the day. And then I think it also drives the UVC down to the surface. And that's not good. UV readings here in aggregate should be around 6 to maybe 8.5. And we're consistently running 11, 12, 13, sometimes as high as 16, and sometimes like the last few days when we hit 16 and it's persistent, then we get the very harsh actinic rays that burn you in just a few minutes. So if you're sun at your balls, you better watch out, right? If you're at 47 degrees latitude. There's a lot to suggest that the shape of the Earth and where you are on it will have impacts on how harsh the actinic rays are. Our atmosphere used to be very much thicker. And so right now we're dealing with Earth having an atmosphere that's reduced and more oblate. So if you're down at the equator, you have a thicker chunk of atmosphere here protecting you. And so if you're up here where I am at 47 degrees north latitude, we have thinner, I didn't draw it really accurately, but we have a thinner layer of atmosphere, so more sun rays come through at a harsher level. This will continue, but even into, but as we go into summer, even then we're going to get these harsh actinic rays pushing down even into equatorial regions. So it will be very harsh indeed. This is all part of the Ice Age. It's all part of a predictable pattern of change. Humanity's been through this before. We've lived through this kind of crap before, these grand solar minimums. We weren't in the position of recording videos in previous ones to leave to ourselves now, so we don't know about all the shit that went down in the previous ones ahead of it and as they were entering into it. But I suspect it was greatly like what we're dealing with at this point. So we got the strange energies, surprising strange energies from space, because there was no real anticipatory lead up. The last time I'd seen the bump up in the strange energies, the rise in the UVA and UVB ratio, which is indicating a split between them, the rise in that ratio crept up over a long period of time, maybe, let's say 11, 12 days, little increments. This one was, boom, there it was. And it held steady, so that's why I'm talking about it. Anyway, so I suspect there'll be 3 days that'll be involved, and that it should hit us Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But it may be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you know. And coincident with these strange energies, surprising strange energies from space, we get humans doing batshit stuff. So we should find proof of this forecast in the weird actions and strange reports of those weird actions about our fellow humans over these next few days. We also have Three Gorges Dam. Now, all these things are sort of interrelated. Well, they are interrelated because they're all happening in the same universe. Can't get away with that. Three Gorges Dam is, the Chinese are acting weird about it now. In May. They've been acting weird about it for maybe about 30 days. From what you can gather in open Chinese publications, because none of the secret dark web stuff is available anymore. In these open Chinese publications, we see language that should not be expressed this time of year, in my opinion, but would have been more applicable in August and September. The reason that I'm saying that is because August and September are the hard downside of the Chinese rainy season of late June, July, and early August. So the rain hits all of the Himalayan mountains and all of the foothills and stuff during that period of time. And then over the course of a couple more months of continuing rain and so on, feeds into the rivers. And traditionally, the flooding season, which affects rice growing and everything else, all kinds of harvests, including mining, that flooding season would traditionally be August and September. Now we're seeing the same kind of language that appeared only last summer, late last summer, in August and September. So there's been a shortening. We've had an unexpected pressure being put on the Three Gorges 2, 3, 4 months ahead of when I would have expected it in the normal course of weather. This could be due to the language. See, so we don't know if there have been extraordinary storms, there has been extraordinary rain, but the amount of language that's being allowed to be reported on it is sporadic and controlled to the degree that you just don't get a real flavor of how pervasive it is in a lot of the regions that feed through to the Yellow River, to the Yangtze. And so you don't know. It could be, for instance, that the language is showing up not because of excessive rains, but because the dam itself is weak. Because the language I was looking for indicating anxiety and this sort of thing is there now, as I say, surprising me several months early. But it could have been just a holdover from the dam having been so pressured last year, as opposed to shifting forward several months of the water flow. And the issue there is, if the water pressure is building up now, and let's see, if we were cautious, we would say it was 45 days early, exceptionally only. In other words, there have been times when the heavy rain seasons had caused floods in China for a couple of decades. They would go on for a couple of decades. That would cause these floods to occur. This is before the Three Gorges was built. Caused these floods to occur in mid-July. And so if that were the case, then we would be optimistic in saying that, okay, let's just take that as the high tide mark, so to speak, for the water levels in terms of when it happens, and how early are we to that initial kind of extraordinary event. Well, we're 45 days, 41 days maybe to early for these extraordinary events. So we're that much out of season. Now, if we were to go to the mean extraordinary flooding, that would be in late August or early September. And in that case, we're talking 60 plus days early on this level of flooding and this level of anxiety language. So this does not bode well. Now, it could be that in the course of climate change that we're undergoing now as a process of going into ice age, that the rain season itself will be altered. And it could be that that's good or bad. So the rainy season could be shortened. And so we could just deal with a ton of pressure on Three Gorges right now, and then it could fade and they might go into a drought. Equally not good, but better than the Three Gorges, being better than the alternative, which is that the rainy season would be lengthened, the most likely occurrence. And that this early start is simply an early wave of a very long rainy season. So by the time we get to August and September, we'll have massive amount of pressure on the dam if it survives to that point. So these energies from space contribute to this because they affect the cloud cover here on Earth. The UV, all of the UV light causes evaporation from water, lakes, rivers, streams, oceans, plants even, people even. And all that water vapor goes into the air, the cloud cover forms, it draws all that water up into it, takes it somewhere and dumps it. And usually now behind the Three Gorges Dam somewhere. And so that's what brings it up, is the amount of language that's growing there. Also affecting the Chinese are Woomers, okay, no solid anything. Nothing can be validated on the other side of the Chinese internet gateways, which are this racked out area of mainframes. But there's a Woomer that the Chinese are engaging in or planning for a major Antarctic mining expedition. Now, okay, so planning for it, doing it, different things, right? That's not really why I bring it up. There's no substance to it other than the Chinese in Antarctica are doing things outside of their zone. They're not telling anybody. The units that are doing those things outside of their zone are military, and they're significantly outside of their zone by like 1,000 kilometers, that sort of thing. But of course, in the wasteland there, you hardly ever run into your neighbors, right? In any event, so the Chinese are doing weird stuff in Antarctica, and the rumors are that they're getting ready for or planning for a specific kind of mining. Now that's, again, as I say, that's not really my point for bringing it up. My point for bringing it up was some strange language that is attached to the rumors that goes back to some stuff I actually had seen on the deep web maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Let me think. It would have been 4 years ago. And these are a series of reports that Chinese scientists had made to this particular brain trust or advisory council of whatever you want to call it for the CCP, for all things geophysical, okay? And this council, I had run across some information from one of their documents where they were referencing documents that they'd got from some surveyors in Antarctica. And so basically what I'm reporting is like a third or fourth hand, third or fourth speak, so to speak, right? I mean, I can't validate any of it, but it was quite interesting when I read it because the language said that the surveyors in Antarctica on whatever expedition or whatever they were surveying, I don't know how it relates to anything other than just this one little snip in there, said that they had found an area where it was factual and certain that they were looking at a mining operation, and that this area was both under ice and emergent, and that it was clear that carriers, trucks or something, presumably some kind of a wheeled carrier, had been in use in the mining, and it was also clear that they had come across a cache, a place where the cleaned up product from the mining had been stored in these repositories. Now, I don't know what the material that was being mined. I don't know if it was coal. I don't know if it was iron or what, right? But apparently it had been gone through some level of processing and had been like set down. And at some point the ice had come over it, and then at some other point the Chinese had come in somehow and found this stuff. So the rumor is, the woomer is, that the Chinese, wherever they are operating, wherever this report was from, within Antarctica, have found a store or a mound, or I don't know how it's stored, just a cache of pre-mined material of some form that got them excited enough to let the CCP know that, hey, we don't even have to fuck around with it, we just got to take trucks up there and we can haul it off. And so maybe that's what they're going to do. This is, very interesting to me because of all of the stuff that's going to supposedly come out of Antarctica during this period of time, in which we have the UFO stuff being released, in which we have the currency breakdown. All of this stuff was forecast by all these reports, and including giant levels of flooding, that sort of thing, and also including Ice Age victims. And we've got those now in China. 20 long-distance runners were killed by hail or were frozen to death. That was the interesting one. They had to have 700 PLA rescue troops go hunt for these runners that were doing this long-distance run through some mountains, and they were hit by extraordinary, exceptional, never before in this region at this time of year, bad weather that is part of the heavy rainstorms and all of this stuff that's been hitting Wuhan and all the other areas that's also going to affect the Three Gorges Dam. So the Ice Age victims are also part of the same process that's affecting the Three Gorges. And I think there's 1 or 2 people still missing. The damage was quite extraordinary, though, reading the reports, because not only were these runners injured, but there was 20 killed, but there were 100 that were injured. And the injured report being nearly frozen to death, basically the only thing that saved them was being trapped under other bodies. So there was some level of insulation and warmth on top of them. And when the rescuers came, they found ice piled on top of the dead guy, and the dead guy on top of the not dead guy. And so that was basically the only thing that saved the not dead guy. And this is this flash freezing effect that we get that's been forecast in the reports since maybe 2009, really got into it in 2014 through 17, something like that. So a lot of these things are hits from that period of time. We don't have the hit on the Three Gorges yet in terms of rupture and so on, but that's a yet. It's sort of an unknown. We don't know when it's going to happen. Hang on a second. Anyway, there may be a sneeze trying to come out. Anyway, so we've got the Ice Age victims in China. Now in the USA, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. We've got the vaccine wrecks, both as accidents, people driving down the road. There's been a number of those. We've got the vax wrecks itself in terms of it's wrecking people. Now the CDC is forced to examine the issue of all these teens that are getting heart inflammation and problems. Coincidentally, that's what all these black guys are dying of, DMX, etc. Hank Aaron, they all die of a heart inflammation that's taken as a heart attack. But because it's the vaccine and because it doesn't happen right that instant, it's put down as not being associated. So we're being led down this pathway that's not good. The vax is causing wrecks out of teenagers, and they're trying to push it down into younger and younger and younger people. And their logic is all bad, and there was never really never was a pandemic. I'm not even certain that they actually attached the spike protein to the coronavirus. We were given certain sequences, and if we believed the people that had the sequences, they isolated the coronavirus and saw the spike protein on it. However, Mike Adams, health ranger guy, is of the opinion, certainly acknowledged paranoid opinion, that the Chinese never had done that. They'd never actually achieved the spike on the coronavirus, and instead what they had achieved was the ability to present the spike protein in and of itself in an aerosolized fashion, as though it had been attached to a virus. And they did this through a number of nefarious ways in order to basically kill off vast quantities of the Chinese population, because there they gassed them. They had those trucks running in Wuhan day and night for weeks at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Were they actually just gassing all of the residents? Because they killed birds. We saw the birds, we saw the cats, all of the wildlife dying almost instantly. And, you know, it killed animals in their zoos and all of this sort of thing. So I don't think it was an antiviral agents they were spraying. I'm of the opinion now that it may well have been spraying out the spike protein itself. And then the people, you can also say that occurred in Italy due to the way that in northern Italy due to the way that the spread occurred there. And then we've had a situation where it may well have occurred here in the hot spots in the United States, in New York and others. So I'm uncertain. It is just so confusing. But we do know that they were paying for this gain of function research. We don't know if they were successful. We do know that they created the spike protein, that this is not a natural thing. We do see them bragging about having attached it to a coronavirus, but this was Fauci's head of projects for this. We know that they paid $3.2 million grants to the Wuhan lab periodically to continue this research, but we don't know if they were ever really successful. So it could be that it's actually a scam about a pandemic at a great level, and they're just literally gassing us in order to gaslight us about the pandemic. Or it could be that there is an actual virus. It does not matter to me at this point, because I've determined that the vitamin D levels in your body give you para-immunity to the spike protein as well as the virus, so that anybody that's on the chaga gangster approach, where you're taking enough vitamin D to get it up over 47 nanograms per milliliter, which might be, you know, it's going to be different with every body. The bigger you are, the more you have to take to achieve that level. The more sunlight you're in, the less you have to take. The darker your skin is, the more you have to take. The darker your skin is, the more you have to be in the sun longer in order to get the same benefit. So there's all of these factors, right? You just got to get your vitamin D up there and keep it up there, and you're basically immune to the spike protein itself. And so you don't get any problems from that. Now, you are also immune to the virus from vitamin D. You can't get colds and that sort of thing. I just don't get them. Never get colds or flus or any of these illnesses. I get sniffles from irritants, right? I don't get hay fever or those sorts of things, but I encounter dust. I encounter pollen that is actually an irritant and doesn't have little spikies, or is just, as soon as I get rid of it, I'm cleared of that. A lot of this is due to the vitamin D levels. Okay, so in the data sets that are showing their temporal markers now, we had a bunch of them for ice age flooding here in the USA that was going to have a two-pronged kind of an effect. One thing would be to create sort of an inland sea west of the Blue Ridge Mountains, sort of a big creeping giant delta of the Mississippi that turns into a larger inland sea. But on the other aspect of it, all of the rivers that drain out of the southeast into the Atlantic were also going to get hit very hard. And one of the problems of the flooding as a result of that was forecast for that was that there are nuke plants there that were going to be flooded out, overcome with water, and going to cause real problems. And we're getting into this period here, right here, where if you go and look at where all of the Ice Age victims were and where the rain is, and follow those bands around the planet, you see that our Ice Age flooding may be on its way to us now, at least a very good-sized chunk of it. So we may get hit in the southeast and in through the Red River Valley down into Mississippi, Missouri valleys, we may get a very significant dumping of rain this year that makes previous years look very mild. And so we might have extensive flooding that continues for some period of time. It was forecast within all of these sets that are having these temporal markers, so I bring it up. And it is potentially a first series of problems that may, over the course of years, bring us to these nuclear problems in the southeast as a result, basically, of rising waters. And, you know, where the intakes are flooded out, too much debris, and where the outflow just can't outflow because there's too much water flow, that sort of a thing. Anyway, so we'll see how that develops. Okay, so we've got U.S. aid. Now, the Alta reports had, the data sets had forecast that aid would collapse, that we'd get to a point, and it's probably this year, where the United States dollar would be so trashed that U.S. aid would be essentially meaningless, that we could give, you know, $500 million to some country and they could, okay, we'll go to our local Starbucks and buy 2 cups of coffee, you know. so it's not going to probably be quite that bad, but basically it was the beginning of something that can be described as a 2-tier money system, where basically dollars outside the U.S. don't mean shit, and they are still used inside the U.S. And so that's kind of a reverse of usually what people think of as a 2-tier, because usually the countries try and restrict what goes on with the money on the outside of the country, and here they would love to have the reserve currency continue, but it just won't. This is going to have a direct impact on U.S. aid to anybody, everybody, all budgets, all that they can print out another $99 trillion this year, and every extra dollar they print is just going to make it that much worse. And it's not going to be effective at all, and they're sort of hamstrung. So they've come to the end of their game, right? To the end of their plan. They've run out of resources. They're not able to push it forward. Just like the vaccine. They're not able to get much over 48% of the population to accept the vax, no matter what they do. Their bribes are falling flat. People just aren't going for it. And there's now a rising number of voices that are extremely anti-vax and showing their actual physical problems from it. And so it's getting worse for them insofar as selling the vax. The idea that Biden is going to be able to say that 70% of the United States population has taken the vaccine by July 4th is absurd. The growth rates are just on all of these places. All of the vaccine places are just dying. There is one here, well, there were 2 here that they just had to shut up. Nobody in my county and 1 county over. Big places, parking lots, ambulances standing by, which is curious, and these tent things that they set up to do the actual inoculation in. People just aren't there. They're just not being used. So they were there week after week after week. You never saw any cars there. I had occasion to drive by them predictably on all of these medical appointments. I would drive by these 2 things at predictably the same time, week after week after week on the same days. And so I got to know their routine as well as a result of doing that, and they never had the volumes that they were obviously expecting. There was never a giant clamoring, you know, give me the vax, that kind of thing. Anyway, so the U.S. aid is collapsing just as all of their other narratives are in the OverWoo here, as the Woo takes over their stitchery of lies and a few bits of truth, and things are coming out. The vax recs include a lot of the what we might think of as social justice warrior class, because a lot of these individuals were sold into the authoritarian mindset that the vax actually was going to work. Trust the you know what you're not being told, I guess. And they went ahead and did it, and took the vax, and now they're dying and having all kinds of problems. And this is. I mean, this is local. I've run into people who have had relatives that are now paralyzed in one or more limbs as a result of the vaccine. And it's been going, ran into a guy 4 days ago where we were both standing in line waiting, and he was telling me about his cousin that took the first shot, isn't going to have the next one, and has been sick with a fever for 7 weeks. 7 weeks with a fever. And you know, she gets up out of bed and she's instantly weak because she's working with a fever, just trying to walk around in 7 weeks. Pretty rough. Anyway, so last thing on here is the pogrom. Pogrom is a usually planned, like ethnic cleansing kind of a thing, right? It's a plan a lot of people think that the pogroms are spontaneous, but from long festering resentment and that sort of thing. But in my opinion, having seen how they've operated through history, I think these are usually planned. And we've got one going now against Jewish people here in the United States. And this was forecast in the Alta reports, and the forecast was one of those, of course, I didn't want to have materialized, didn't want to have it manifest, because actually a lot of the stuff in the Alta reports I didn't want to have manifest. But in any event, so here we are, we got the pogrom. It was in the Alta reports in the same sets as the failure of U.S. foreign aid. And which is a good thing, right? A good thing all the way around. Good thing for all the countries. It eliminates a whole corrupt class there that's not getting their bribes. It's a good thing for the United States citizens because our backs no longer have to support this huge burden of giant corruption around the planet. It's a good thing for the dollar. The dollar will strengthen as a result of the dollar failing in an interesting kind of a way, right? Anyway, that was always in the same sets as the pogrom against Jewish people here in the United States. And as with all pogroms, it's going to be ugly and nasty and so on. This one is interesting, though, because of what it's going to reveal to us. In the very near future, we're going to see emerge a new narrative that will be sold or will be put out into and it is already, I've seen some examples of it, being put out into the public domain, and that is that we're going to get BLM, so this is it is factual. This is the curious part of all of this, okay? So there's a lot of facts here that are facts. They're not misinterpreted, they're not fake numbers or any of that, right? So the majority of the Bolsheviks that got the Bolshevik Revolution going, the majority, like some 85%, were Jewish. This fact won't be brought out, I don't think, and that's not pertinent, right? That's not pertinent to what I'm going to go into, because it's about the banker elite class. The bankers as the tools of the power elite, and the power elite having formed an alliance with certain Jewish families. And it is that alliance between the power elite and the Jewish banking family cliques that taint Jewish people relative to non-Jewish people's opinions, okay? So it's really complex, but the bankers are essentially Jewish, but are quite willing to sell other Jews and let other Jews be used as chattel and destroyed if it furthers their aims, okay? So just like any other group of people, you got bad actors and good actors. So I'm not saying that Jewish people in any way are deserving of the pogrom or anything like that. I mean, we see it with the Palestinian groups here in the United States that have been allowed to go and beat up on Jewish people because there's no law enforcement in these cities where they hang out and so on. But what's going to be coming up was forecast in the Alta reports. We didn't have the names then. I didn't know it would be called Black Lives Matter. I knew it would be a cultural revolution, but I didn't know what form it would be, but I just suspected Marxism or some form of cultural Marxism. In that thing, in that revolution, in that cultural Marxist ethos or techniques, you need a perpetual bad guy in order to gravitate the population to do violence, in order to get them to go through this initiation phase so that they will commit atrocities for you. And that's really what they're trying to do. And so they're trying to desensitize everybody to this, and they're trying to do this this technique again. And so what the language has suggested is that there's going to be a juxtaposition of Black Lives Matter and the pogrom, in that Black Lives Matter is going to come on out and say that temporarily now, not permanent, but temporarily, slavery was not all white supremacy. That slavery in the United States, all the slave owners in the United States, 78% of them were actually Jewish. And then the Black Lives Matter people are going to go even further, and they're going to say that, and that's factual, by the way. I think it was 74% or 78% of all slave owners in the United States, in the South, were Jewish. Doesn't mean anything, in my opinion, right? I mean, it means a lot, but it's not, and it means a lot historically, but it's not meaningful in the moment. But they're also going to come on out and they're going to tie in this to Israel now. Okay, so the meme, or the theme, is going to be that be brought out that Black Lives Matter is going to try and sell the idea that from white Southern slave owners back to the British slave ship owners, back to the British and French bankers, back to the African collection entrepreneurs, I guess you'd call them, or warehousers. All of those people are Jewish. That's what the Black Lives Matter guys are going to come out and say. Now, historically, some of those people were Jewish, right? And you can't really say that all of them were, nor can you really say that it was all a giant Jewish plot back then in order to cause things to bust up now, or whatever your rationale is for using these facts in your particular agenda. My reason for bringing them up, though, is that indeed, they're going to be able to show that there were British Jewish bankers and French Jewish bankers, and that the British warehousers of humans in Africa were, in the main part, Jewish. So all of this is going to feed into this anti-Jewish pogrom, but it's going to be, so it's a weird kind of deviation, all right? So in my opinion, the communists are trying to gin up a race war between black people and young people and everybody else, all right? And they don't care what the everybody else is. And at the moment, what they're trying to do is to turn black people and black people allies against Jewish people, claiming that, well, temporarily, maybe we shouldn't be so hard on the white guys, because maybe it wasn't the white guys, maybe it was just the Jewish people that did all the slavery stuff and that sort of thing. And this is a very bad thing that's going to occur, okay, them trying to sell this language. They will get pushback. They're going to continue because this is what they need as a part of their plans to destabilize the society in an effort to prevent all the stuff that's actually happening right now, which is the audits, all of the stuff coming out about the big lie and the big cheat, and the sex trafficking and the pedophilia and the forced incentivized immigration and George Soros and all of that, right? It's all true. It's all 100% true. All that shit's true. And so on the other side, the cabal is trying to get all of their forces all stirred up in order to stir up the social mass. Now, 80% of the social mass is not involved with the power elite. the power elite have only a small cadre that they can really directly influence, and then they can maybe influence that other 20% to some degree. So this stuff will work to some degree. This program will continue to some degree. But unlike other social orders, they're not going to be able to turn a mostly homogenous population against a minority, right? And that's what they're attempting to do now. They're attempting to do it in a weird way by having one minority group attack another minority group and trying to elicit the majority to also attack that other minority group. Complicated. But these guys are master social engineers. So when you see factual material coming on out and the mainstream media going, oh my God, I didn't know, you know, that sort of thing, be aware you're still being sold part of an agenda. That this is all in support of this push for their own purposes, which is not for many purposes, many different reasons. This social destabilizing pogrom. It's, you know, we live in some really interesting times. Anyway, so now here's the thing. The foreign aid here is going to fail because I think that our banks are going to fail. I think that the foreign aid is going to fail not necessarily in June, but it might in July or it might in August. But I think that we're going to get the first serious indication of bank failure showing up relatively soon. I suspect that we might see those indicators of bank failure as a result of the surprising energies from space, so it might be this week that we'd get the first indications of it. I don't know how extensive it'll be. I don't know what the communists are going to do about it, how far they'll let it go within the social order before they react. There's no political will to hold things together. And we're under great stress at this moment. So it might be that we have a very large bank failure, or it could just be the beginning of an ongoing sort of grumbling, kind of continuing sort of bank failure that we sort of had with the savings and loan debacle in the 80s with the Hunt brothers and the silver and all of that. Because that took, it took months and months for the savings and loans to go and fail. A lot of them had indications they were failing within the first few weeks, but if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't really necessarily know that there was that much going on. There's no real way of saying at this point exactly how it's going to collapse, but I bet I'm of the opinion that that there will be regional bank groups that will be able to form into larger regional banking collectives, self-organizing collectives, and overcome some of the problems by maybe early or late fall. But I think we're going to go through a really bad period here this summer. So now we can postulate a number of different things, right, as to how the powers that be are going to try and play things, but we can also speculate that a lot of their plans are going to be curtailed and constrained by that banking, by the continuing ongoing banking failure. If it fails all at once and the whole thing goes and the dollar is absolutely worthless and we're all scrambling around into a barter situation, well, then the whole system has come down all at once and we can rebuild from that point. And then at that point, there is no longer a banking collective ruling us. You'd not owe a mortgage. You wouldn't owe any money on anybody or anything like that. I'm not in any way offering anybody financial advice. This is forecasts and speculation about what might occur in a general sense in a stressed out society should the stretched out banking system decide it's going to have its last payday. So that's it. That's all I've got on my list here. Long week. and it's going to be a longer one this next week. Rest up, get your pure sleep, and at purebulk.com, and get good sleep. You know, do your exercises. Don't overdo them like I did. And get ready for all of the work we've got this summer, because we've got a lot of work this summer dealing with all of these messes. I'm of the opinion, though, that resolution, like being a resolved, I'm just, you know, resolved to finish it. I'm going to clean it up. There's going to be problems, no big deal. You know, let it collapse. I got my broom, I got my dustpan. We'll get in there and muck it up and make it all better. And it's better to do it now than later. So it's that kind of a situation. Again, it's not going to be fun for anyone as we go through this time. But that should be very satisfying, and we're going to have a very much better generation, another great generation that emerges from the trials and troubles that are going to affect us really brutally these next few years. 21 through 24 are going to be the worst, I think. It'll shade a little into 25 as well, but then thereafter it should ease up considerably in a lot of different areas. So anyway, watch out for the vax guys and lend assistance as you can with them. You're probably okay. You're probably protected with the vitamin D. There seems to be a lot to support that.